Many people still don't seem to recognize the occult very much, and some even ridicule it. Though, there's a whole secret world sort of side by side the public world. A way I like to describe it is that it's kind of like the Harry Potter series. You have the Muggles and the initiated, and also some who might be aware, even though they may not directly be a part of it. During my research, I discovered many of these people in power and in the occult actually believe in magic and casting spells. So in a sense, I think the metaphor fits well. In fact, I think the author of that series is probably someone who is aware of the secret world as well. It seems clear to me by some of the symbolism that is used. I used to think this stuff was kinda crazy. I believe there must be secretive groups in power, but didn't think I could prove it, so I focused on more provable areas. Then a few years ago I saw a video on YouTube about occult symbolism in a Hollywood movie, which led to more research, and I started seeing symbolism in a new way. And seeing it all over. Even in my local small town, I found their influence all over the place. On street numbers, on statues, even whole buildings and churches are here that are dedicated to these groups. You might even find that someone or numerous people you know are in these groups, maybe even family or friends. It's more pervasive than I ever thought before. Or, you might not find that at all, and it might still be the case. Many people are good at keeping secrets, and you might never know if someone is in a secret group or not, especially when some of these groups may also even have strict punishment for revealing such kinds of information. I'm not trying to add to any kind of paranoia, I'm just telling it how I see it, and I think it's important to think about and talk about the possibilities. After I started speaking out about what I learned, some of my friends confided in me and told me they were in certain secretive or initiatic groups. Though most people seemed to either not care very much or thought I was crazy, and there were a few who were apathetic and felt like there was nothing they could do. I've moved through life since then feeling sort of like a minority in the sense that I recognize there are magic symbols all over the place and that there's a whole other world coexisting that most people don't seem to be aware of. For example, there's a 32nd degree Freemason who wrote a book titled Cinema Symbolism, and he is admitting that symbols are hidden all over popular entertainment. He doesn't really take a sinister point of view or position about it, which is, I think, to sort of be expected, but he does admit it is happening. Seems clear to me if you study it for a bit, but it is still especially helpful to get confirmation from someone who is a part of a secret or initiatic sort of group. I'm paraphrasing from memory, but if I remember correctly, he said some of these symbols and things are hidden to give a deeper experience to those who are in these groups like the Freemasons. So, this goes to reinforce the idea that there is a whole sort of secret world out there, sometimes even right in front of us, hidden in plain sight. Even in cartoons and content made for children, you will find hidden symbolism, which is a bit concerning and disturbing sometimes as well. I highly suggest looking into the book if you're interested in this topic, or just doing some of your own separate research, as it is a fascinating subject. You can also find some of his interviews online on YouTube and elsewhere probably as well. The guy's name is Robert W. Sullivan IV. Also, for those who say that Freemasonry is not a secret society, I mostly agree, and that's one reason I try to stress the words initiatic or occult. Freemasons aren't secret in the classical sense one might expect, as they exist rather openly to an extent. However, I think a decent amount of what they do is still secret and done behind closed doors and not in the public light, so to some degree they are occulted. And there's conspiracy theories or even quotes from former members about how it's different at the higher levels of Freemasonry. So, how do we, the public, really know for sure? It might be more proper to say that they are a secretive society rather than a secret society, or to refer to them as initiatic, which refers to being initiated, which I think is a pretty fair word to use. Anyways, just wanted to clear that up real quick. Let's move on. Speaking again of Harry Potter, there's a good tie-in here with the occult, Hollywood, and Harry Potter's wand. In the series, Harry Potter had a holly wand, and through my research I heard it said that the holly wood from a holly tree is a wizard's wand of choice, and it does indeed have strong connection to occult magic. In that sense, you could almost think of Hollywood as a metaphorical wand, putting out certain kinds of entertainment which act as spells on people who are unaware. Sort of like subliminal programming, it's often in the words and pictures. To be clear, I am not saying all the magic coming out of Hollywood is bad or negative by any means, though I do think there is a lot of dark magic coming from Hollywood, and it is something to be concerned about or aware of when some are casting spells on those who don't know it's happening. I think consent is very important, and it's almost like some in the dark arts are able to manufacture consent by hiding it in pretty or alluring packages, which reminds me of the word glamour and its etymological connection to all of this in the form of magic and enchantment. But let's continue with the holly word. I looked into the history of holly and found connections showing a possible relation to Jesus, and that maybe his crown of thorns and the crucifix were both potentially made of holly. So I think maybe holly could mean holy, and that they might be synonymous. They're only one letter off after all. I think there's a good chance that there is some kind of link there. Is Hollywood a holy wand that the occult uses to cast spells? I believe it is. Oh, and I just want to say that I'm not personally convinced Jesus existed in a historical sense, though I still want to present the evidence I find and entertain the possibilities. There's also this weird thing where you can find the word wizard mirrored in the English alphabet. If you take the letters from the word wizard and swap them with their opposite letters, like A with Z and B with Y, it spells wizard backwards. This could have been a sort of extreme odds mathematical coincidence, I guess, but I personally believe it's not an accident, and that it hints at something more. The implications of this are staggering to me, that those who created our very alphabet may have hidden the word wizard in it. It's fascinating. If that is true, so many other interesting questions arise. Maybe I should make a whole episode on that sometime. Anyways, moving on. It looks like we also have other extra meaning hidden or lost or just not well known in the alphabet. Each letter is a spell itself in a sense, and when you combine them together in certain ways that are associated with certain meaning, it opens up more possibilities. For example, the letter A is believed to represent a bull's head, and to me, it also represents a pyramid with a cap, sort of like on the US $1 bill. I looked online and it looks like a bull is supposed to represent strength, power, higher consciousness, and fertility, and there's a strong link there with capitalism and money as well, if you look into that history a bit. I believe the letter S is likely meant to represent a snake. For one, the letter itself looks like a snake, and we even have words that start with the letter S that have interesting associations. For example, snake itself, and serpent, slither, sin, Satan, all start with the letter S. And there's many more words that start with the letter S with similar sorts of spooky, dark, or negative connections, like sacrifice, suicide, slave, steal, and slaughter. I can't help but feel that is not a coincidence, and there's more going on with the language involved. Perhaps some kind of polarity being expressed? I'm not sure. Snakes aren't always bad or negative either. I just want to be clear about that. They actually have very positive symbolic meanings as well, like life, fertility, rebirth, transformation, healing, and more. But it's still interesting to note considering the sort of Christian narrative that much of the world believes in. Interesting symbolism like the snake is hidden in so many obvious places. Especially in relation to our money sign symbol in the United States, which is basically an S with a vertical line through it. Sometimes there's two lines, and which based on my research probably represent the snake coiled around the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden. Now, that's kind of a mind freak if you think about it, isn't it? That the symbol we use for money in the United States and elsewhere just might be a representation of the biblical story of the snake in the Garden of Eden? There's also a quote by Manly P. Hall where he suggests that the name America actually comes from Amaru, and that America is essentially Amaruka, which means land of the plumed serpent, or what some people take to mean as Lucifer. From what I've seen, he is a pretty highly respected researcher of the occult among certain kinds of people. Some may take exception to that, and he might be wrong. I don't know the truth of the matter one way or the other, yet I do think it is interesting to think about and consider, especially as I have some even deeper, more private information on this subject that I'm not sure I'm ready to share publicly just yet. However, I do want to say that I do think from my perspective that it seems very likely that America was indeed named after Amaru and is connected to the serpent. I did a quick search and Manly P. Hall also appears to have been a 32nd degree Freemason. I see one claim that he even became a 33 degree Master Mason. So that's another thing to sort of think about and let sink in. The United States is, I believe, generally sort of seen as a Christian nation. If I remember correctly from research I did in the past, I think virtually every single president was a self-proclaimed Christian except for a few. There were 0 atheists to my knowledge, and the few non-Christian presidents still claimed to believe in some kind of intelligent creator. Many of them were also admitted Freemasons as well. Yet, where we live is possibly named after a serpent or Lucifer? Really? There's a surprising amount of other similar examples that are like this as well, though I think I'll talk more about that in a separate future episode. The list goes on with deeper meaning for individual letters and numbers and geometric shapes for that matter. I believe each letter has its own significant, deeper occult meaning that I think most people don't know about. To be clear, I don't really believe in stuff like God or Satan like many people do. I'm very skeptical of it all and admit I don't know what it really means. It also seems clear to me that many people do believe in such in a much more literal and serious sense. And I can respect that even if I may happen to disagree or am agnostic. Words are kind of like worlds in themselves in some ways. When we spell our words, are we casting spells? Is writing like a rite or a ritual? Interestingly enough, the word grimoire appears to be linked to grammar, and a grimoire is a spell book. A grammarian is also associated etymologically with being a wise man and a magician. By the actual literal definition and origins of some of these words, it makes one like myself think that maybe we are all casting spells all the time when we write and speak. I don't really think we should fear this idea or mock it and laugh at it like some do, just recognize the possibility of it. Maybe magic is a lot more common than most people think. And maybe it's not typically how we might think it is if we are expecting something out of popular entertainment. Based on my understanding, the word occult essentially means hidden. It's not so nefarious as some might think, and is more neutral and can apply to many different areas. Magic is also etymologically connected to the forces of the unseen world, and I think spirituality and things of a supernatural sense can often be occult as well. If everything in the physical realm first started in the spiritual world, you could almost even say that everything is tied to the occult if you look at it in the right way. Something else I'd like to say is, I believe studying the occult can be both deleterious and even dangerous, especially if you're a bit too trusting and accepting of information without deeper scrutiny. And I mean that in the friendliest way, as it's such an incredibly complex, deep, and mind-bending subject that I realize how difficult that can be at times to navigate. According to a quote from Albert Pike, who was also reported to be a high-level Freemason, he claimed initiates at the lower levels of Freemasonry are intentionally being misled. I think many of these occult groups are probably similar in a sense where they make initiates feel like they are being given special secret knowledge, though not all is as it seems. In ways, the occult can become a very religious sort of experience, similar to how Christians go to church and believe in the God that their various Bibles speak of. The parallels are very strong actually, especially for example in a group like Freemasonry, which I've heard is supposed to require that initiates believe in some kind of creator. To be clear, I'm not saying those things like God or a creator don't exist or aren't true. Maybe they do exist and are true. I just admit I'm personally unable to prove such things with my current understanding, and probably always will be unable to prove such things. So I'm a bit agnostic. The point I'm trying to make, I think, is that the occult is sort of like a way of life for many people. It becomes like a belief system for many from what I've seen. Have you ever heard of the Bohemian Grove? Some of the most powerful people in the world get together, wear robes, and do a mock human sacrifice there once a year in California under the giant redwood trees and a huge artificial owl, which I've heard is made out of stone and concrete or something like that. I think that when the place first got started, that it could have been actual real human sacrifice, as rituals like that are reported to have been done in ancient history. Also, I guess it's possible that real human sacrifice could even still be happening at the Grove and elsewhere in modern times. There are some claims and reports from some people about things like that really happening. And I think it's difficult, if not impossible, to 100% prove such claims, but I have a feeling that some really messed up, immoral stuff does probably happen sometimes, in some ways, at some of these hidden places that the elite frequent. Some people try to say that virtually anything kept secret is immoral or bad, and that virtually everything should be exposed to the light of day, so to speak. And I sorta used to think that way too. However, after researching this for a while, I now see there is a decent argument out there that sometimes secrecy can be very important, and that it could even mean the difference between life and death. I'm not sure what the answer is here, but I do believe in private property and the freedom to conceal yourself. And I think I would just hope that we could work towards less secrecy as a people and better address this unjust power that is being leveraged upon us by the secret world. Some people also try to suggest that the subject of secret societies influencing the world is basically woo-woo, and that powerful people in politics and elsewhere meeting in secret to empower themselves is a crazy conspiracy theory. Yet, there is actually a sort of empirically accepted historical timeline for secret societies like the Illuminati and many others. There's also a secret history as well, which can be challenging, if not impossible, in some ways for those on the outside to try to sort through. In all of my research over the last number of years that I've been interested in this, and I'm just guessing here, but I've probably learned of around 50 or more different significant and powerful secretive or initiatic groups. It's hard to talk about numbers or say much beyond a certain extent since so much of this is so secret, unless people voluntarily release information or it is leaked in some manner, but there is certainly some very tangible and compelling info if you look. I have no idea how many occulted groups there might be, or how many could be at the highest levels of power. Yet, I would guess there are probably thousands of occult societies, and millions, or even hundreds of millions of members, both present day and going back in history around the world. Which ones are at the very top? I can't say, though I do have a few suspicions. I think in all reality though, they are probably so secret, we don't even know what their group name or names are. In fact, they might not even have a group name. Another interesting aspect is that there are those who claim certain secretive groups were or are actually the good guys, or are sort of like secret heroes who helped to free us from royal tyranny, religious tyranny, and governmental tyranny, among other forms of tyranny. I'm certainly open-minded to this, yet I have some serious skeptical questions about it as well, especially in the context of what is now going on in the modern day. Also, please don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are probably some good occult groups out there, and the friends of mine that are in occult groups seem like really good people to me. Yet, it does seem like many in the occult are corrupt and are trying to increase their own power unjustly at the expense of others. And the occult is being used as a vehicle for that kind of delivery for those kinds of people. And because of that reason, I think we should try to become more aware of such. Whether or not that is true in regard to benevolent secret societies, it does seem that some groups are more nefarious or malignant than others. I think it's revealing how many terrorist events happen on numerologically significant days, including 9/11. The amount of occult influence surrounding that event really opened my eyes, and is one of the major reasons I feel so compelled about the issue. And I have to say, I see some really dark stuff happening. As crazy as this might sound, I believe the events on 9/11 and the resulting wars could even be linked to some kind of ritual similar to the one observed at Bohemian Grove in regard to human sacrifice. How do you defend against or prepare for something that you don't know even exists? This is one of the most serious issues we have, in my opinion. And I think it leads back to, or is significantly linked in ways to, many of the other major challenges in the world we face as a species. The people in power appear to be really good at working together in their secretive groups. And the masses are so disorganized, it seems, that we are really at a huge disadvantage. I think it's very empowering if we can try to create and cast our own positive sorts of spells which help to heal and educate. Or if that's not your thing, then at least just realizing and being aware that some people out there believe they are casting spells on us is so important. I think when you know it's happening and become more aware, much of that kind of magic loses its power over us. In closing for this episode, I'd like to say, I believe one of the best things we can do is talk to people in the occult worlds and try to befriend them. I think that might be one of the most effective ways of bridging the gap between these worlds. Having these worlds separated, I think, keeps us separated. It would be optimal if we could somehow have the secret and non-secret worlds meet. Then we'll hopefully realize we aren't so different, and we'll become less segregated and more connected and unified. Hopefully. Okay, so this subject is massive, and there's a lot more I didn't get to. Yet this episode is getting pretty long, and I will almost certainly be doing a follow-up or more future episodes on this topic. There's so much more to it, and we're only scratching the surface. Anyways, I think I'm done for now. Thanks for listening if you did. Now that I've shared my thoughts, I encourage you to share your thoughts if you want to. Feel free to drop a comment on whichever social media is best for you, or you can send an email to exploringthoughtpodcast@gmail.com. I'll do my best to respond if it's reasonable for me to do so, and if I have the time and am able to. Thank you for your time, and bye until next time.